Okay, so the kind of dress that I'm making here is a panel galidar with the underskirt that's going to be cut on a bias. Okay, the fabric on top is a very thin chiffon, and I've cut multiple gullies. These are pieces that are approximately 7 inches at the bottom and about 1.5 inches at the top, and I've kept that 1.5 inch for a length of about approximately 6 inches, and then I've blended it in with the width of the bottom. So these are just small pieces, and there's actually 24 of them that have been attached together to get the gear. So if you multiply 7 inches by 24, you would understand what the gear of this dress is. And also approximately 1 inch by 24 then gives us the width, 1.5. I needed about 24-inch waistline width. Okay, so here all I'm doing is just evening it out. No matter how careful you are, you do get a slight bit of unevenness at the bottom because you're joining so many panels. Just remember to join the panels in vice versa direction. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to cut the underskirt with this, which is on a silk base fabric. The top base fabric is a very very lightweight chiffon based fabric, and I've decided to fully line this in a cone shaped cut skirt. So I've laid the fabric out in corner to corner matching, and basically this is a method that, you know, if you're doing like an umbrella cut, or I've explained it in many of the videos. Even if you want to see this, you know, the last video that I did, it actually explains it in that also. But it's I'll give you a little bit. Let me just cut this and I'll give you a little bit of a description of what it is that I mean. And okay, so let's just get some fabric. These are the leftovers now, and I just need to line a little bit of the sleeve with that. So if we just get a standard fabric, and I'll explain what it is that I've done. So when I'm talking about a cone shaped, this is the length of the fabric, that's the width of the fabric, and all you're doing is taking the length to the side of the width, and that's done on a 60-inch wide fabric. And so when these two corners meet up, you've basically sort of like halved the fabric. And then you take the waistline off from here, you take the gear off from here, and the length that you have from there is the length that you will get from here, and you would cut exactly the same, so that each of these sections are meeting up and are parallel. And this is going to be, generally we cut the above layer of the dress like this. For this particular dress, I'm going to cut the lining in this. So that's how I've laid it out. And then what I've done to save fabric, I've cut the one out from, basically you imagine this to be the fabric, and I've cut the one out going like this, and then I've taken that and placed it around here, and I've taken it out from that side. So that gives me, in a 2 yards of fabric, that gives me the full length. And then I'll get a little bit of a waist from here, and I'll get a little bit of waist from sort of around here. So that's just like a fabric opened up. You imagine the width of and the length of this table to be the fabric, and you're basically taking away your waistline from here of the table, and then you're you know, that's your length and that's your length, and then you're circling it out and taking all the outer layer off. Okay, and exactly the same on the other side. So let's do another sort of a diagram explanation of that. So in case any of you didn't understand that, you imagine this to be the width, length of your fabric, the width of your fabric. What you would do is measure for the waist and cut from here, and then you would measure for the length and mark it there, and you would also measure for the length and mark it there, and then you'll start measuring from there, and what the length is here, So what the length is from the waistline, this is your waist, and that's the length of the dress. And you would meet all these up. These are just measurement, you know, so you'll have that, you'll have the length from there to there, there to there, and you would get one side of, you know, and then whatever you have on this side, you're cutting the next one from here, and again it's meeting up like this. So you would get that piece of the fabric and that piece of the fabric just as your remains, and again it's the same thing, and you've got your two skirt panels. Now this is just a rough sketch. That's your waist, and that's your gear, and that's your gear, and that's your waist. So you've got exactly opposites. Now just another thing to bear in mind, when you're cutting, make sure to cut the length of the lining a little bit, quite a bit longer than the dress itself. The dress will have a border, and I want the border to cover the lining joint. Don't leave it above, because it looks, then you can see part of the leg and it looks absolutely horrendous. So you know, here this is going to have a thick border, at least 6 inches border to lengthen this, and on this then we're just going to do a turning, and we want that covering of the lining done by the dress itself. And basically just kept it a little bit wider on the hip area. So opened up, it should look like this, and opened up this, it will sit on this. I mean, if it seems wide on the hips, we can always slightly narrow it down, but I want the top one really nicely fitted, and the bottom one you can slightly fit it out as well, because you know it has, because it's cut on a bias, it will have the stretch. So that's what that will give it, like the flared out look, and then lots of gullies joined to get the top layer result of this. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just give you a description of the top portion of this dress. So this is actually the gear, and what we're going to have is we're going to contrast it with the turquoise. Originally it was supposed to have been the mint green, but the mint green against the face, it didn't really do anything, so I've gone for a slightly darker look. So this is just a straight cut bodice in your own measurements, whatever. If you're making it for a child, if you're making it for an adult, obviously you'll take the waist measurements, the bust measurements, the shoulder measurements, and the neckline that you want to make. And then to finish this off, I'm going to overlay this with this lace, just to hide the covering in between. And the full combination of this, these are the sleeves, and I've taken off, using the Wonder Web on the backing of the sequence fabric, I've cut along and you know, taken off the design, and then ironed it onto the chiffon to make sure that it blends in, because what it is, the outfit's got to look like they've been obviously designed in such a way that they match perfectly. And then to hem it off, I've got the same trim as the lace. So that's like a description of you know, how you'd go about cutting the dress. Now the panels, I'm just gonna quickly describe what we did with the panels as well, in case any of you get really stuck with that. So you've got, this is the skirt part, and the panels, basically this is your fabric, and what I've done is I've taken so I've sort of kept like a smaller, slightly smaller, 1.5 inches, about 6 inches down, and then I've kept it 7 inches from here, and that 7-inch width I've sort of, so you imagine that to be the fabric, and you'll get sort of that much left from one side and the same left from the other side. And then that gully, I've taken it and I've laid it out on top of here, and this time it's come like such. So one is going in the one direction, one is going, and then I've taken that gully, laid it here, and taken out the next one and taken that one and laid it here. So it's by doing vice versa, and I've used 3 widths of the fabric, and this is just a 45-inch wide fabric, and then it's basically joining them up. Now the trick is in the joining. When you join them, you join 2 gullies at the same time continuously, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So you're basically taking that and placing it on top of that, sewing down all of them one by one, and then on the second row you're starting from there and you're coming back upwards. And if there's any deficiency, so say you're joining the 2 panels up one on top of the other, and on the one you've got a slight bit of excess left at the bottom of this gully, then make sure that on the opposite side of that gully you leave the similar distance and start sewing back up, and hopefully when you get to the end you should meet up absolutely precisely.